Welcome to the Firebelly Social Show. We're focused on talking to food and beverage brands that are on a mission to make the world better.
Hey everyone, Duncan here with another episode of the Firebelly Social Show, where we chat with founders and leaders of mission-driven food and beverage brands. And we've got a special show lined up for you today. We're going to be taking a really deep look at health and nutrition in general. So I'm so excited to present the show today. So the episode of today is brought to you by Firebelly Marketing. At Firebelly, we help mission-based food and beverage brands bring people closer together through social media marketing. So if you're ready to use social to create more community and excitement around your food and beverage brand, go to firebellymarketing.com. So today we have a returning guest, Dr. Josh Anthony from Nlumn, and we have a colleague and a friend of his, Mariette Abrahams from Kina. Now listen, these guys know what they're talking about. Mariette is the CEO and founder of Kina. It's a health nutrition technology consultancy, and she's all over the place. She's being interviewed by BBC, and she's got a lot of great ideas and information for us today. And Josh, the CEO of personal nutrition company Nlumn, a pioneer in the personal nutrition space and the co-author of the Habit Path study. Welcome, guys.
Great to see you again, Duncan.
I'm so happy to have you guys here today. What's really going on in the world of health and nutrition? And Josh, why don't you kick us off? And what's the topic that we should be talking about and the opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Mary and I both bring expertise in personalized nutrition, precision, and health. And I think one of the things that we need to talk about are how consumer attitudes toward health are changing, right? This is in part bolstered coming out of COVID-19, but I think more and more consumers have been seeking health solutions for a long time. And so when you really take that into account, consumers' attitudes toward health and just people looking for all things personalized, we're really seeing a rise in the interest in personalized nutrition. In fact, we just completed a large consumer study in the US, over 3,000 people, and we found that 57% of consumers are actually interested in personalized nutrition and precision health. What's really remarkable about that is that I think for a lot of time, people have thought this is sort of a niche opportunity. But we actually found that there were about 26% of our study population that had used personalized nutrition health tests or kits in the last year. That actually then would translate to, because 57% that were interested, it translates to about 15% of the population. So that may not be mainstream, but that's certainly an attractive segment and would equate to about an opportunity of about $7 to $8 billion annually.
Mariette, your take?
Yeah, I think COVID has certainly contributed to the awareness of people in their health. But the connection that consumers have made now is that food is more than just, calories and comfort, and food and actually has, I would say healing properties, but it contributes towards your health. And I think that is what's important. And so there's two elements that have kind of come together, which is number one, food is powerful and actually can contribute to your quality of life and your health span later in life. But also technology has moved on fast and everybody's sitting with a smartphone in their hand. And now all of a sudden you can access information and health that can benefit you as a person. I think that is really the opportunity for companies not only to create better products that contribute to health, but also if you are innovating based on what the consumer interest is, your failure rate will be much lower because you are actually moving with the market where consumers are more interested and engaged in their health than ever before.
Duncan, maybe I...
Yeah, sorry, Josh.
No, I think that I just wanted to kind of highlight something that Mariette said. It's really important about, consumer attitudes and their needs. This idea of quality of life and mental and emotional wellness is really a hot area right now. And I think one of the challenges that we have is a lot of the innovation in the past, or the science, came out of an area that is more disease focused, right? We have good markers of cardiovascular disease and great markers for looking at things like diabetes. Not so much so in some cases for mental and emotional health. And what we're seeing is, consumers see nutrition as part of that solution, but there really is a need for innovation in those areas.
Absolutely. So I think with innovations, it's so broad, it's so wide, but a lot of times companies have set ways of how they do innovation. Yeah. So it was all about maybe focus groups, or maybe specific interviews, or maybe, you get an expert in, at certain point. But we need to think more broadly and more in depth about how we really talk to our consumers. So it's not about doing huge consumer studies. This is a broad kind of trend. We really, really need to understand what are those triggers for the consumer about why they want to make those changes, and what outcomes are they looking to have, and how can food and technology play a role in that? And what trade-offs are they willing to make? Because of course, when it comes to kind of, not everybody's motivated to change. Everybody wants to know what they should do, but not everybody is, motivated enough to change that. And I think that's really a really important aspect. And actually, Josh, I'll jump to you on that one, because what do you see in terms of companies? Because we are seeing that the dynamic is changing, where it's not so much market driven, but it's really demand driven from the consumer to say, no, actually, if you don't, deliver these brands or these benefits, then I will switch. And that's a certain thing we have seen.
No, I appreciate you asking that. I mean, I think, you're right. We've really moved away from a, if you build it, they will come, strategy, because, and right now, I mean, Duncan, this better than anybody, where are consumers looking, right? They're on social media, kind of understanding, what the opportunities are for them, and building their own social ecosystem that's kind of reflective of their needs. So I always like to, when I'm working with clients, talk about, you have to keep the person in personalized nutrition, meaning you have to start with what is a relevant health and or functional benefit for them. And it's not just about the technology that can help measure where they're at, but it's also then having the information or the products that can help to drive behavior change, right? You need technology and you need behavior to enable that change. And you have to be able to bring those together. So for companies, it's about understanding what benefit you want to go after, understand where in the ecosystem you can play best, and then really looking to kind of pair up with the right people to kind of fill the gaps to help to address the consumer need. You can't do innovation just based off of what you're good at. You have to do innovation to kind of complete a need, measurement, behavior change cycle. And then that's what's really successful in driving innovation today.
Yeah, I think the ecosystem is so important. So we at Keenat track the personalized nutrition industry, so we can kind of see what are the shifts happening within the industry. So it started off being very tech focused and reports very data driven, and now we see a shift towards how can we make it easier for people? How can we really fit it in, rather than bombarding them with data and graphs and charts and nudges all the time? But it really needs to be more personalized. But not all companies do one thing or many things very, very well. So there is a need for this ecosystem approach, where companies, especially when it comes with food, and then we need to partner up with other companies, you need to, again, understand the consumer to understand what is it that will help them. So is it maybe, a coach, or is it a meal plan, or is it recipes, or is it helping them with shopping? But if you don't have a good understanding of what are those levers that you need to pull to be able to create that ecosystem or the solution focus that is really centered around the user, then you are just going in another direction of constantly launching new brands or constantly adding new features without really satisfying the needs of the consumer. And I think you found a lot of that in your survey, isn't it, Josh? In terms of this kind of, we have so many products, but people are still not happy. we're not getting it completely right yet.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we found, I mean, it's not necessarily surprising that cost can be a big challenge when it comes to personalized nutrition services. And we do have the opportunity to continue to work to democratize it for all people. But the other part that is a big gap that we found is support. And, really people need support to kind of help them make better decisions so they can live a healthier life. While 2/3 of people said they needed more support, only 1/3 were getting support that met their needs. So this really suggests that we have a challenge when it comes to the value equation of personalized nutrition. They're just not getting the value back from a lot of offerings that they could be. So we see that support as being a critical gap, and being able to integrate the right level of support, I think, can really be transformational to the industry. And I absolutely think this is an area that, like right now, it's probably going to be more the domain of healthcare professionals who are the most trusted source of advice. But it's also an area where I can see tools like AI becoming transformational in this space.
I love that you called it an ecosystem, because it really isn't one thing. It's multivariate. It's multidimensional. There's so many different things that are coming together. Even if the consumer has the right information, they may not know what the right product is. If they know what the right product is, they may not be using it in the right mix. If they're using it in the right mix, maybe they don't have a partner at home to do it with them, or anyone on the outside to support them. All of this has to come together.
Yeah, correct.
So it's Dr. Josh, you were saying, what are the stakes with, maybe I'm going at it the wrong way, but what are the stakes of not getting it right?
Yeah, I mean, so really we see we see the challenges or the issues about not getting it right today. Excuse me. We're spending in excess of $3 trillion on chronic lifestyle diseases here in the US that could be avoided. I mean, it's a huge cost to our healthcare system. It's costing employers more than $550 billion a year in terms of productivity. Think about that for a minute, right? That is more than the revenue of, Amazon or Apple or Microsoft in a year. And it could save 100,000 lives. So we're seeing the cost of not getting it right. What does it mean if we can get it right? I believe that we can help every individual make better choices and live a healthier life, aligned to their goals. And one of the things, like part of my mission behind all of this, or part of the reason that I, am, working in the field of personalization, helping to build these ecosystems with companies, is it also provides an important opportunity to improve both the health and the food system, so that, we can make choices that are affordable, that are accessible, and also add in there acceptable, because food plays a lot more roles in our lives than just being, medicine or health, right? It has to fit the social, the cultural, and the emotional aspects of food as well. So I think that we can create a healthier food system while we're creating greater health for individuals, and have a big impact in not just our food ecosystem, but our health, our global community.
Yeah, and I think an important point to raise here is, of course, personalized nutrition is very much seen as maybe something that is targeted towards, the biohackers, or the ones with high disposable income, whereas actually the biggest impact we could have is targeting this personalized advice to individuals who are at higher risk of developing these lifestyle, chronic diseases. And so there is a lot of discussion around, okay, well, if we're going to offer that level of personalization, then how representative is the food that we are recommending in these kind of personalized systems, when potentially the research is very restricted to North Americans or North Europeans, and so we need to make sure that whatever we are recommending to people is representative in terms of what they are eating culturally or regionally, and that also matches their taste preferences, for example, and the health goals that they want to achieve. So there needs to be a lot more empathy in terms of what we are doing, rather than a top-down approach and saying, well, we think you should be eating kale smoothies every day, or you should be eating. So there needs to be a very, very more open mind in terms of, if personalization does have such a huge opportunity, we need to make sure that it is representative, that it is inclusive, that people are actually open to it, considering some of the historic events we've had in terms of research as well, so that we know that people actually can trust the information. Because if there's no trust in the solutions that we are creating, we will not reach those health outcomes that we are essentially looking for. And this is where I think it's important to always, challenge not only the status quo, but from the entire value chain, look at how do we conduct research, how do we innovate, how do we make sure that we are measuring the right outcomes, and how do we keep on giving feedback and receiving feedback in terms of the quality of solutions that we are developing. And that's where I think is an exciting opportunity, because we are really kind of at the beginning, where we have so many disciplines now at the same table discussing how can we move, health forward. It's not just about the nutritionist talking nutrition and the doctors talking medicine. And it's now a range, if we're going to move the ship to a more preventative approach, like Josh said, rather than waiting until people are actually sick.
Yeah, Duncan, I think there's actually, Mariette's hitting on two really important points there, right? There's the culture of food, but there's also kind of the science of personalization. In a lot of ways, while personalization does need to be democratized, we also have this interesting juxtaposition in that oftentimes it's, lower socioeconomic status groups that suffer proportionally from chronic lifestyle diseases. So part of the promise is reaching those groups, which in a lot of cases we have better biomarkers for and better research around. But we need to kind of make sure that we can democratize personalized nutrition. We need to make sure that the data sets that the information is based off of is representative of all people. And we need to make sure that we're communicating information and, food recommendations in a way that is going to be, culturally appropriate. So, Mariette, I've heard you speak about this, many times, but
many times.
You might want to just kind of touch a little bit on some of the challenges around the data, maybe expand a little more on the data set challenge right now. I don't know that everybody fully appreciates that gap in research right now.
Yeah, I think even from research that has been done in Alzheimer's disease or diabetes, where specific population groups are so underrepresented in actually the study group, so less than 5%, even though they represent maybe 14-15% of the actual population in the country. That would really tell you that actually we need to relook at data sets and really identify how are we selecting those data sets. What are the potential biases that not only we hold in terms of selecting the data sets, but how are we analyzing it, and who is analyzing that, and what recommendations are we making based on that? So I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done still on making sure that, especially when we look into prediction, like machine learning, AI, is how are we selecting those data sets, and are those data sets actually transparent? Are companies transparent about, what is the composition of those? And because usually these data sets, they black boxes. We don't know how those algorithms were developed. And so I think that's the first step for us to have kind of like a more industry-wide look at how can we make it more transparent? How can we make sure that it's fair? How can we make sure that it's people are making responsible recommendations, and who's going to be accountable? So I think data sets are they are the crux essentially of personalization, but it's how we need to actually start from scratch and think about who do we recruit, and then how do we grow them and learn from that in a way that the industry as a whole, including academia as well as a stakeholder, can benefit from that. And I think that's really important.
I think it's interesting as, let me say, this, I'm fairly new to this space, and I can see how important it is with, cutting edge or maybe supposedly cutting edge products. But what I'm hearing you say is that it's massively skewed based on the data set that they might be using. And then I'm also wondering about the obvious influence of, the profit motive. It's like, hey, I'm going for the quick kill, as opposed to, hey, I'm even the verbiage around quick kill is wrong, right? It's like, hey, as opposed to if I democratize the product from a price standpoint, then my payoff is significantly huger. But then you're looking at it from the standpoint, we'll just use Coke, for example. It's like, hey, if I introduce all these really healthy drinks, that are great for certain populations, what's the education around that? And am I going to cannibalize my already high performing sugar drink?
Yeah, it's good. It's a very fair question, but let's kind of look at some of those different pieces. So I think that one of the challenges that comes up a lot of times is this idea about, technology driven. This kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier. We have to be careful about kind of that you will build it, they will come. There's also kind of there's an offset or another piece to that, though, is that the ability to utilize benefits and behaviors that consumers are already adopting and helping them make sense of data. So a couple things about that. So first off, 40+% of people are using some type of a data tracker or wearable right now. The majority of them are looking at them at least once a week. That's a wealth of information. People need help making sense of it. Few people are better at reaching consumers than big consumer products companies. So they can help people with data make sense of it to reach their goals. And when I say reach their goals, it doesn't have to be an N of one. We can look at large segments. This is the concept of precision nutrition, right? Precision nutrition is about looking at like-minded groups in a given benefit. Where are most companies today? Most companies are aware of trends or health trends in different areas. They're aware of high protein and well aware of, ketogenic diet interest or gluten-free or low FODMAP. Each of these products inherently have some limitations or challenges that are with them. Keto-based products are notoriously low in fiber, as an example. Yeah. They may be lacking potassium because they may not be coming from, more plant-based sources in some cases. Vegan products maybe have limitations in certain B vitamins or zinc or iron. So one of the things that companies can do is take these basic products and make them better. That is, address some of the gaps and then use their power of communication to help make it easier for people to sort for them. This way, you're not working against consumer needs. You may already have a number of the products in your portfolio, and it's about sorting them and helping people to get to them. And it's not necessary, it is really more of a commercial innovation than a straight product innovation. This way they save money, but what you're doing is you're driving people to value-added products and hopefully increasing their market basket. And in this way, also helping them to use the diet type or the diet tribe, sometimes we call it, that they're already part of, but helping make it healthier. It's a first step along the way into like true personalization. However, it can really engender great interest in the company because they're making the healthier choice the better business choice.
And they're also helping to educate the consumer and helping them along the health journey. And I think there's a lot of, not controversy, but consumers don't always know who to trust. Like, are you just marketing to me, or should I trust you, or what are you? Is an alternative motive here? And I think that's what's really key, is that there is a lot of misinformation online. People are like just so influenced by social media, bloggers, and it is a problem. But companies can leverage that as well by putting out accurate information, and we can see this playing out in the marketplace where consumers are curious and they want to do the right thing, but they are following maybe the trends and then adopting behaviors that is not good for them and for their health. And I think that's where companies can play a huge role, combining that. And I feel sometimes that companies don't always want to invest in the education piece, because the education piece is a slow piece, but it's an investment for the longer term, right? And I think that's always is sometimes undercut, but it's so important.
Yeah, I think that the piece that is, one of the key pieces that's changing is, as opposed to kind of starting with a measure, the smart companies are nailing this portfolio challenge and this education challenge, and then integrating in a feedback loop, right? Yeah. So think about, what, Pepsi's doing through Gatorade and its sweat patch as an example, DSM integrating measures into their supplement portfolio. So I think that there are some places where, just as a few examples, where larger companies are moving in that direction. One of the things, though, too, Duncan and Mariette, I think that would be amiss if we didn't talk about it a little bit, is how AI is also going to be fundamentally changing how we think about the personalized ecosystem and where we can go with it. Mariette, I know that you've been featuring some different segments on AI. You talked to BBC about it. I had a chance when we were speaking together at Illinois. You talked about the power of AI. I know you've been deep in the area of AI machine learning. I mean, how do you see that evolve? How do you see that evolving the field?
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating because there's so much, fear mongering about AI and how scared we should be. But I think from a nutrition point of view, it poses so many opportunities because it can help for us to overcome the challenges that we see in nutrition, which is, first, we need to understand what you are actually eating before we can give you feedback. Now, even that sounds so simple, but it's very difficult to get a good understanding of what people actually eat and why they make those choices. Well, AI can make it easier if we can take pictures, if you can talk into your phone and we can analyze that, speech to text, for example. All these different ways can make how we translate the information and the data that we get, whether that's text-based, whether it's image-based, and translate that into the actual feedback and the recommendations that we can give to individuals. And this is kind of a starting point. But what we also see a lot is that consumers want information in different ways, in different formats, at different intensities. And so it's difficult to give everybody exactly the same one, which is the easy way to do it. But if we really want to personalize, we should be able to personalize the way we want to give those messages as well in a personalized way. And that we can only do that by leveraging AI, which means that it gives us the opportunity to provide the information at the right time for the right individual at the right format and even the right intensity based on when they are open to receive that information. Because people are used to now getting their 90-page reports. I don't know how many people actually read a 90-page report, or they say, oh, just give me something to print out and put it on my fridge. Well, it's on the fridge, but I'm not reading it. And so it's the timing when you receive the information and when you know what to do and when to do it. It's because it gives you the immediate opportunity then to implement that advice. And I think that's the opportunity that AI will bring to us, to bring it into the realm of real time, but also in the realm of prediction, where we can most likely predict when you would be more open to receive information, or when we are, more likely to predict when there's going to be a challenge for you. Because think about it, we make those 200 decisions about food 200 times a day. And so there's a lot of things we need to think about. And it's very easy to give advice, but actually to act on the advice is much more of a challenge. And that's where AI can really play a role for us to have your own little virtual coach or your own nutritionist in your pocket, or just providing you that reassurance that, hey, you're on the right track. Just be careful that, it's Tuesday, you have your stressful day, it's your presentation day or something like that. So it can nudge you to manage your life. And this is where people, because they are so busy, they don't have time to digest all this information, to fit that information into their lives in a lot easier way. So I think the potential for AI is big, especially in the area of nutrition, health, and behavior and wellness. But I think, as I said, we need to be responsible. We need to make sure that there's accountability and that there's a human in the loop that checks that that information that is provided by AI is accurate and relevant.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's one of those things that you mentioned this concept of sort of just-in-time intervention, helping people make the right choices. And I think really to be able to do that, you have to be able to bring together that social, behavioral, and health-based data, right? And I think that one of the things that is really transformative about this generative AI is the ability to have dissimilar data sets talk to each other. And I think that's one of, that captures in my mind sort of this exciting potential to get us to that just-in-time intervention, have the light beer instead of the IPA type of a thing, or, eat this, not that. Those types of things, I think could be very meaningful and just kind of help give those nudges that help people make like the next right choice. Right.
Yeah. And I also think now with AI is here. It's not like we're going to turn back the clock and say, hey, no, it's here. And people have now kind of experienced a little bit of what it is that it can do, whether get an instant answer. And I think it'll spread to other areas of our lives where it's going to become, a requirement that companies can actually provide that kind of interaction and instant response. So I think it'll change the face of how we interact with our consumers moving forward.
Excellent.
That's really fascinating. I picked up one thing that I related to my own life, and I'm sure so many other consumers are like that, which is a tool like MyFitnessPal. Seems very, very simple to use, but actually incredibly difficult, because it takes time to find the stuff. It isn't really, Mariette, when you said some of the things, I'm like, it actually isn't a very innovative product. It's just a list with a lot of data behind it. There's no object recognition. It doesn't ever tell you anything. And you're still paying like $100 or $90 a year, right? So it's like, but then I started thinking, what are you two's thoughts on like devices, these rings, is it the Oura ring? Like how much will that help with the data collection piece as more and more people are looking at personalized health devices like that?
Yeah, I think it again comes down to what would motivate you. For some people, it's data from an Oura ring. For some people, it's MyFitnessPal because it helps them to keep them accountable, to log what they are eating and then tracking and seeing what it is. For some people, they need somebody who's going to tell them, hey, on the right track, you just give them a thumbs up or get a sparkling balloon or something on a message every day. So I think that's the important bit. You need to understand what would motivate the person to keep on doing what they need to do to be able to achieve their health goals. So I think these wearables and sensors are important data points to provide that kind of longitudinal data, but it's just one data point. You still need to understand the context of that person's life to make sense of that Oura data. And so I think it's going to be important because they might not want to log their food for 2 or 3 days, but they will wear an Oura ring because they don't have to think about it. It's collecting data, without them thinking about it. So I do think it plays an important role, but it only plays an important role if the information and the feedback they get from that is relevant to them and they can act on it.
I think that the context of the person's life is, that point that just made, Mariette's really important. So I think as we're thinking about devices, we have to think about that. My working assumption is to some extent people will use devices because they're cool or their latest technology. But I think that at the numbers that they're being purchased at, they're buying them for a reason, right? There's something that they're interested in monitoring: sleep, heart rate, movement, blood sugar, so that definitely has to be considered. And again, as I mentioned earlier, 2/3 of consumers aren't getting the support that they need in these programs. So I think what's happening is like they're collecting the data, but they still don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And so again, it's a matter of kind of stitching together that biological data with the behavior data to help people react just in time to make a better choice. I do think though that on both sides, we are getting better. AI technology is getting better at food recognition, and food intake or measuring food intake is one of the great challenges in nutrition. At the same time, wearables and devices are expanding. smart glass, hearables, smart hearing aids, more, wearable jewelry, smart clothing, non-invasive monitors that are going to be measuring a variety of other substances beyond just glucose. So I think that you're going to be able to kind of get a more complete view of the individual and help them make better choices. Now, in that context, though, it doesn't necessarily mean that more data is better or more data wins the day. If we can help to reach consumers and understand why they're choosing a given wearable or what problem they're trying to solve, we can focus those measures or that information around that. I always want to kind of come back to, more data doesn't win. I'll just say, like, when I was working on Habit, right, the founding chief science officer, I think one of the mistakes that we made is we asked for too much data up front. And I think that was a barrier for a lot of people, both in terms of cost and time, right? Not quite getting the value equation right. So scientifically sound, but we missed the opportunity to kind of build a relationship with the consumers we were onboarding them. So keep it focused, kind of the message here is keep it focused on the benefit, and you can have a meaningful and affordable ecosystem.
That's amazing, because when you think about the pure, I'll bring it back in a way to my world for the discussion, but in the kind of the original meaning of marketing is, how do you get people to do certain things in the market, right? And then the sales team comes in and they, sort of like they act on demand generation and they take it to the client, however that is, B2B, B2C. But it sounds to me like with a lot of the innovation at the very grassroots level, somebody has an idea, maybe it's in response to their kid's, condition, and then they decide to act on that behavior. They're seeing a trend, but a lot of the cases, like, they don't have enough insights to know whether they're at the tail end of the trend or the middle of the trend or the beginning of the trend. They don't know how to measure the trend. And so they get into something, and, as we know, 90% of all small businesses fail in the first year. I guess, where do you think those founders who are so important to us, because they're, at the grassroots, the numbers are great, we want those people to succeed, what should they be doing differently?
Yeah, I'll start off, Josh. So sometimes I do get questions like that, and my advice is, usually, if you have this burning desire to go build that thing, and then we'll talk about, get it off your chest, and then we can talk about finding out where are the problems, or where are you going wrong, or what did you learn, what did you see, without spending too much money. But usually when people have this design, they think they're going to solve the world, let them do it. And then you come back. On the other hand, you can say, okay, let's talk to some of the people who have actually bought your product, and then see, how did your product fit into their lives? Did it actually meet the expectation, or what is needed to solve the problem for this group? Usually what I find is that people don't understand, or people don't know what problem they are solving. They want to be too disruptive in actually a market that moves a lot slower than they think it's going to move. And so then they make a mistake and then they fail. And so I think it's very important, again, to either go and build it, or really get deep into understanding who are you serving, what problem are you solving, and is that problem big enough, considering the shift towards more prevention and intervening much earlier in your life, and actually also having kind of more of a food focus rather than a medication focus or quick fix. So I think definitely that is some of my insights anyway. Josh?
Yeah, I kind of build on it, but I mean, probably some very similar points. I personally live by the philosophy that you find your purpose at the intersection of your passion and who you serve. And my advice to clients and businesses isn't very different. Somebody may be very passionate about a new technology, but then my next question is, who are you serving? What is the problem that you are solving? And do they care, right? That becomes very important, because I think one of the challenges that we have in the industry right now is oftentimes things are built around what we can build. So you have to be really sharp in terms of your consumer need And then really a lot of our process is helping to construct a minimal viable product or a minimal viable solution, and then talking with potential customers to see if that is something that works for them. Is that an ecosystem they're excited about or want to be part of? And I think this is a good way to really kind of get something out there and be able to do market research, around it to see if it's, if it's a sellable proposition. And we get all that in hand before you even have to move forward and do a market test. But you definitely have to be prepared to, fail fast, fail often, because it's not a, it's definitely not the old kind of linear model of innovation.
I also want to add to that, sorry, Duncan, that this way of innovation is definitely changing. And I think a lot of the companies that certainly I speak to is they have like a consumer insights team, and then they have a marketing team, and it's like, no, but we know what we're doing. But actually what you didn't do is get a fresh perspective on the ground, unbiased, unfiltered, to just ask the questions that maybe you didn't ask or were too scared to ask because maybe it conflicts with internally, the business perspective of the industry or the solutions that are out there. So I do think it's very important, if you shift your kind of lens in terms of innovation, is don't just go out there and say, yeah, we've done it. Yeah, we confirmed. Actually, you need to reframe your question to see, are you really answering the problem, addressing the problem that you are trying to, by getting an external perspective as well.
Duncan, the one other thing too that you said about sort of changing trends is also important, right? You have to be able to kind of determine where the puck is going. Mariette has a tremendous system that she's developed, Akina, really to kind of track, companies that have been coming into this space and leaving this space. And I think that, you can see this sort of a bit of an evolution in terms of where, what are companies measuring? What are they measuring it for? And I just, Mariette, just as Duncan was asking the question, I thought you might go there, but maybe you want to talk a little bit about how, trends have, how you've seen some trends evolved in terms of how companies are trying to fill those gaps in the marketplace over the course of the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think over the last, let's say 10 years, it was, at the beginning, very much test driven, you need to buy a test and then you get your results. And then it's kind of we came to the realization that, people are not helping people to change their behavior. And so this awareness of including behavior change techniques has come in for people to act on the actual advice or that data that they are now aware of. And now that we know that we need to help people to change their behavior, we now see companies adding more and more services to what they are offering. So that could be, recipes, it could be meal plans, it could be meal kits, it could be coaching, it could be telehealth service. But they are starting to shift towards incorporating more services into the solutions to make that customer journey better, but also get more data to understand what is working or not. What we are finding, though, is that a lot of the time we know behavior change is important, but many of the companies include the same behavior change techniques in a very limited way. So actually, we are not making the products any better. We're just adding it because we know we should be doing something in behavior change rather than really understanding what is driving the trigger to actually act on the behavior. So now we are going to the next stage where we are looking at, okay, what are those behavior change and techniques and what impact does it have? And that's kind of where we are now, so that we can now predict based on consumer engagement or how many people are buying these kind of apps or solutions. Why are some companies doing better than other companies? Is it because they have a few behavior change techniques that they offer really well? Is it that they incorporate more behavior change techniques and therefore, are getting more data and therefore can provide more feedback? So it's a very interesting evolution as we move into more people choosing food over supplements, for example, which is another shift that we've noticed, is that we are seeing, because of this COVID and food as medicine approach, is that meal plans are actually overtaking personalized supplements now. And supplements is now moving more into, functional ingredients, branded ingredients to be included in food and beverage because there's science behind it, there's efficacy behind it. And so how does that then lead into, which wearables and sensors should you then be tracking that kind of impact? So there's a very interesting shift that we can now track in the industry. And the companies who stuck to just selling a test and a report are closing. Whereas the ones that are moving in the space of, okay, actually behavioral science is a hard science and starting to evolve the offering, those are the ones that are staying. And that's really interesting.
Yeah, Duncan, this is for the reason too that I think that, the work that we did at Nlumn, really looking at specifically the personalized nutrition consumer is so important. I got very frustrated with looking at reports that kind of say there's a health and well-being consumer and the personalized nutrition or precision nutrition consumer kind of fits in as a subset of that. That may be so, but we really found there's some, distinct attitudes and behaviors. And in some cases, those don't necessarily match what's being offered in the marketplace. So one of the things that Mariette and I have chatted about a little bit is kind of trying to understand, where the market is versus where the attitudes are and how do we bring those together. So I think that would be an exciting opportunity to explore a bit more in 2024.
Absolutely.
Given that I'm sure you both work in your lives, work with everyone from small companies to giant global corporations, but the people on the small and medium size, who are most of our listeners, what's one thing you want to say to them as we're heading into the new year?
Yeah, I'll start. I think, first, consumer attitudes around mission-driven companies are at an all-time high, right? Particularly ones that look at health holistically. Consumers want holistic health, and it is about health, food and nutrition. It is about exercise. It is about well-being. It is about health of the planet. So mission-driven companies in the space definitely have a role to play. The second part of that is that, as we're working with other companies or larger companies, they are looking for those types of companies to be part of the ecosystem. They are recognized, they may not have all the pieces around the consumer shift. They may not have all the pieces around personalization, but they are looking for those small, rapidly growing companies that want to make a difference and that are, that could be like-minded partners. Because oftentimes they have a technology or a product that the large company might not have. So it's a really exciting opportunity to see how your product or products could fit into, more holistic consumer view of personalization. And obviously, I think that between myself and Mariette, if you're interested or see a potential fit with a company, let's talk, because no one is going to do this on their own. Innovation is going to win as part of an ecosystem. That's what's going to be needed ultimately to make personalized nutrition accessible, affordable, and acceptable.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I think for 2024 in particular, we are living in a cost of living crisis at the moment. And so I think we have to keep that in mind, because the consumers are also living through a cost of living crisis. And so while people are more interested in their nutrition and their health, many people also are cutting corners based on the situation that they are in. And so I think we need to make it very realistic. Brands can make it very realistic to help their consumers to reach nutrition and health without going out of pocket, for example. So we know that people are struggling to meet their fiber intake. We know that, people need to maybe cut down on their sugar beverages. So, we know that people need to increase their fruit and veg intake, for example. So how can brands innovate knowing that helping consumers to meet those very nutritional basics that have a long-term impact on their health span, on their lifespan, and with the education around that. You don't need to be very disruptive if you're going to launch in 2024, but think about the current climate that we are in now. You can still innovate, you can still educate, you can still personalize by creating products that will help consumers towards their health goal as we move in. This period will pass. I'm very optimistic, but we need to think about, for brands in particular, moving into 2024. Keep that in mind.
Wonderful. And before we close, I wanted to make sure people know how to find you. Josh, maybe you can start, and then Mariette go after. How can people find you?
Yeah, sure thing. You can find me at www.nlumn.com, or you could reach out to me at info@nlumn or josh@nlumn.com. In addition to that, shortly, the personalized nutrition study that I talked about, it'll be available to share early next year. So we'll be featuring that on LinkedIn, on our website, and on social as well. So, please feel free to reach out with any questions. Mariette?
Great. So you can reach me at info@kina.tech. That is QINA.tech. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And if you go to Kina, you can also sign up and get a taster of what the Kina platform is about in terms of the competitive landscape and the kind of content that we have on the market intelligence. And yeah, that's the best way to find me.
Thank you to both of you for the work that you're doing. We always like to do this on this podcast. And of course, Dr. Josh Arnell is not here today. She's traveling, but she'd agree with me that thank you to both of you for making other people's lives better. Because I think that's the piece that as leaders, we don't hear enough about how valuable our work is. So thank you to both of you. Also, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for having us, Duncan. Really, really, really appreciate it. Always good to see you. And please tell Arnell happy birthday.
Wonderful. Wonderful. This has been another episode of the Firebelly Social Show. What a fascinating subject today around health and nutrition, and specifically precision and personalized nutrition and the giant ecosystem around it and the opportunities. Thank you to both our guests. This has been another episode of the Firebelly Social Show. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to the Firebelly Social Show. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.